Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are undertaking a very specific deep
A
dive.
very specific one, yeah.
We're looking into one of the most systematic, precise, and honestly transformative practices in the Buddhist tradition.
Absolutely, the cultivation of jhana.
Right, deep absorption.
Mm.
And our mission today is to really understand the blueprint laid out by the teacher, Shayla Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on how she uses mindfulness of breathing to achieve this state of um, profound, unwavering, and you could even say fearless concentration.
And what's so fascinating here, I think, is that we're looking at a highly structured, well, it's like an engineering diagram for the mind.
It's not just a guide to relaxing, is it?
Not at all. This is a method for finding a kind of happiness that is incredibly stable, unwavering, and it really transcends whatever's happening on the outside.
Okay.
And the concentration or samadhi that Catherine describes, it's not actually the final goal.
It's a tool.
It's the key stabilizing tool. It links the ethical foundation you need to have virtue, or sila, with the ultimate goal, which is liberating wisdom, or pana.
So we're not chasing some casual, fleeting spiritual high here. That's not the point.
No, not at all.
We're talking about altered states of consciousness that are systematically mastered. And these deep states, when you use them correctly, they serve as this profound foundation.
Like a mental sharpening stone.
Sharpening stone, that's a great way to put it. A sharpening stone for insight practices for vipassana?
Precisely. And the goal is radical. I mean, we are aiming for something really profound. The ultimate goal, as Catherine is so clear about, is the complete cessation of the poisons that distort our minds.
Greed, hate, and delusion.
The big three. And to get that kind of liberation, you need a mind that is just so stable, so clear, and so unified that it can look at reality without flinching.
Without clinging, without reacting.
Exactly. John provides that clarity, that stability. It lets the mind be completely present for the truth of how things are.
That sets the stage beautifully. So we're looking for a shortcut, but not in the sense of avoiding effort.
Yeah.
It's more like finding the most efficient, systematic path to mental mastery.
And with any systematic path, you have to start with the foundation.
Of course.
And in this framework, that foundation is laid with what's called right view.
Right view, the very first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. And Catherine really highlights this as the key distinguishing factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's what takes an action that might otherwise be just,
Mm-hmm.
habitual or instinctive or even self-centered,
Mm-hmm.
and turns it into a path that could actually liberate you.
Without that frame, you're just doing exercises. You're just calming down.
Right. So what is right view,
Yeah.
fundamentally?
It means you understand the basic structure of suffering and liberation, the Four Noble Truths.
Suffering, its cause, its end, and the path to that end.
Right. The truth of dukkha, the cause which is clinging or craving, the possibility of its cessation, and then the path that leads you there. If your basic worldview is still just about maximizing your own pleasure and minimizing your pain,
Which is most of us, most of the time.
let's be honest, yeah, then your practice, no matter how quiet you get, is still fundamentally rooted in delusion. You'll just end up clinging to pleasant mental states.
And the source material is very clear that this isn't just an intellectual aha moment. It's not something you get from a lecture or a book.
Absolutely not. It has to be a penetrative understanding. It has to illuminate the way suffering forms and the way it can end in every single moment of sensory experience.
Every moment. That's a high bar.
Think about what that actually means. In every moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking.
So if I see something I like, a pleasant sight,
Does your mind immediately grasp at it? That grasping right there, that's the formation of suffering. If you hear something unpleasant, a harsh word,
does my mind immediately contract and push it away?
that contraction is the formation of suffering. Right view is the ability to see that process happening in real time, right in the moment of contact, and to realize, this is how suffering is made, and this is the potential for it to end.
So the real insight happens when you see something differently in the middle of an experience you're having right now, not 5 minutes later when you're thinking about it.
Exactly. You're seeing the mechanics of your own mind. And without this wisdom, we just misperceive the world. We think things are permanent, that they can be lasting sources of happiness, or that they have some kind of solid self-existing nature.
But once you develop this penetrative perception of the Four Noble Truths,
That view, that framework, it will never fall away. Even when the delusion of a solid self arises later on, you'll recognize it immediately for what it is.
just a thought pattern, an expression of ignorance.
And it loses its power over you. So once right view sets that intellectual and experiential context, the next building block is active. It's virtue, or sila.
This is described in the text as the forerunner of the path, isn't it? Like the dawn comes before the sun rises.
A beautiful analogy. And it's the practical commitment to restrain yourself from actions that harm others and ultimately harm yourself.
We're talking about the basic precepts, not killing, stealing, lying.
Right. Refraining from killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and taking intoxicants. And this is primarily about protecting the mind from itself.
How so?
Well, if we don't live by these precepts, our minds are just naturally going to be agitated. If you breach a precept, it inevitably leads to feelings of guilt, worry, shame, remorse.
All that mental noise.
Exactly. Those mental states, the baggage from poor conduct, they are the absolute antithesis of the calm, stable concentration we're trying to cultivate.
So this ethical layer is way more than just being a good person. It's actually a prerequisite for mental fitness. You can't force your mind to unify if it's constantly at war with itself over things you've done.
It's a direct cause and effect relationship. Virtue leads to tranquility and calmness, and that directly supports the stability and deepening of concentration.
And there's a specific practice here, right? Reflecting on your own virtue.
Yes, and it's a beautiful psychological mechanism. You're encouraged to reflect on your own past virtue. If you can recall a specific time where you had the chance to harm someone or lie or take something, but you consciously chose to restrain yourself, that reflection brings a sense of non-remorse. It brings gladness and a profound self-respect.
And that joy, that gladness born from your own good conduct, that becomes the nourishment for the mind.
It nurtures a delight in wholesome states. It prepares the internal environment. It makes your mind a place where it can finally rest in happiness. And that happiness is the exact food that concentration needs to flourish.
So we're purifying our actions and intentions, just making the mind a less messy place to be.
That's a great way to put it. And the commitment to not harm becomes this conscious, powerful action that brings inner peace. It's not just about avoiding the big things either.
You mean even in small actions?
Yes. Even in a simple act of giving something, you can reflect. Did I give that out of genuine kindness and wisdom, or was I doing it out of a sense of obligation, or maybe fear of what others would think? The intention behind the act dictates the quality of the mental results.
Okay, so all this purification of conduct and intention leads us straight to the third foundation, which, for a lot of modern practitioners, is probably the most challenging one.
And the necessity of seclusion and letting go.
Yeah. To get to these deep states, you have to systematically pull your attention away from worldly activities. You have to let go of external attachments.
This is a critical point that Catherine emphasizes again and again. So many of us derive our fundamental sense of identity, our self-importance, from how busy we are.
Productivity equals worth. It's baked into our culture.
It is. And when you go on retreat, or even just set aside time for deep practice, you are forced to drop that demand for productivity. You have to relinquish the sense of self you get from having a complicated calendar.
You have to just...
Exactly. The practice requires us to take time off to let ourselves just meet ourselves, being ourselves as we are, without accomplishing anything.
That's a profound challenge in a world obsessed with optimization.
Mm.
But the sources are clear. This seclusion isn't just about being in a quiet, physical place.
No, it's not.
You could be sitting in a monastery garden, total silence, but if your mind is racing...
Judging the silence, planning your week, agonizing over a conversation from yesterday...
then you are not truly secluded.
That's why the invitation is so radical. Not bring anyone with you, not your clothes, not your body, not your mind. It's about stripping away all the personality masks, the self-image, the mental chatter.
You'd have to leave it all at the door.
You do.
Yeah.
Catherine often talks about how even when she goes on an intensive writing retreat, she has to drop the entire complexity of her normal life, the emails, the meetings. The mind simply cannot hold the profound coherence that jhana requires while it's also trying to manage worldly complexity.
So seclusion provides that essential space for the mind to finally rest and unify itself.
It's the container for the practice.
So we have the framework of right view, the cleanliness of virtue, and the necessary space of seclusion. Now we get into the active cultivation of positive mental tools. And we start with the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes.
Yes. Loving kindness, or metta, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity.
And it's important to understand that loving kindness in this context isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling.
No, it's a high-level concentration practice in its own right. It can be a form of jhana.
How is it a jhana practice? How does that work?
Because it's a strong and pervasive intention of kindness. And an intention is much more stable than a fleeting emotion or feeling, which can change from pleasant to unpleasant in a heartbeat.
So it's not dependent on whether you're feeling good or bad.
Not at all. Metta is the pure intention of goodwill that can pervade a painful moment just as easily as a pleasant one. It's a specific antidote to fear and anger. It's not a mushy, sentimental feeling that has attachment mixed up in it.
It sounds like true metta is incredibly powerful then. It's a kind of receptivity to experience that is strong enough to bear the pain that life brings instead of just running from it.
It is a profound stability. And if metta is goodwill, then compassion or karuna is what happens when that goodwill meets suffering.
Right.
It arises when you are willing to perceive pain in yourself or others and stay steady in the face of it without flinching or trying to distance yourself. If you react to suffering with your own discomfort, you've just disempowered your ability to help or to remain stable.
Then there's appreciative joy, mudita. This one combats the sense of scarcity, right? Rejoicing in someone else's good fortune.
Exactly. That quality is described as light and sweet, like a pure delight. It helps you develop the skill to cheer yourself on and to find a deep delight in the simple wonder of the world around you.
And finally, the fourth one, equanimity or upekkha. And this one becomes crucial later on.
It becomes the most critical factor for balancing the deep concentration practice. When meditators start to achieve real concentration, what happens is that enormous energy and intense joy, piti, and sukha arise.
That sounds great.
It is, but if you don't have a strong foundation in equanimity, that energy can actually agitate the mind. It can turn bliss into restlessness.
That's a fascinating and counterintuitive trap. Too much spiritual excitement can actually break your concentration. So how do you develop equanimity?
It's the calm, steady quality of mind that is willing to be connected with pleasure, pain, and neutral feelings, but it's free from desire and aversion.
So it's not indifference.
Not at all. It's deep engagement without the push and pull. You develop it by seeing what is with wisdom. You recognize the impermanent, constantly changing nature of all experiences, the agreeable ones and the disagreeable ones.
And when that equanimity is really established,
There's literally no struggle in experience anymore. The sources actually describe it as one of the highest forms of happiness, even surpassing the delights of the earlier absorption states, because it's completely untouchable by external conditions.
okay, let's talk more about that necessary balance. It sounds like developing concentration isn't a linear climb up a ladder. It's more like constantly tuning a very delicate instrument.
It is absolutely about exquisite balance, and this is where Catherine's instruction on the factors of enlightenment is so important.
Okay.
To develop concentration, you have to balance the 3 arousing factors with the 3 calming factors.
What are the arousing factors?
Investigation, vikaya, energy, virya, and joy, piti,
On the calming ones?
tranquility, passaddhi, concentration, samadhi, and equanimity, vika. If one of these sets dominates the other, the practice collapses.
So if my mind is feeling dull or sluggish, I need to bring up more energy and investigation.
All right.
But if I'm getting too agitated, maybe by the joy of the concentration itself, I need to lean heavily on tranquility and especially equanimity.
You've got it. It should not be conceived of as some extreme meditative sport where you just push harder and harder. It's a search for that exquisite balance.
It's tuning.
Precisely. And if we're aiming for the precision of jhana, we cannot ignore this tuning process. Now, what happens when you're in the middle of your practice trying to find this balance, but your mind is just stuck?
Stuck in one of the 5 hindrances.
Either sluggish with dullness or just wildly agitated with restlessness and worry.
This is where we learn about skillful alternatives. It's a strategy, not a sign of failure.
Yes. Catherine teaches that when these hindrances are really present and strong, it's often a much better strategy to temporarily shift your object of focus.
To what?
To an inspiring theme. These are things that naturally invigorate the mind. The recollection of the Buddha, of the Dharma, the teachings of the Sangha, the community.
Or even your own virtue or generosity.
Exactly. Things that bring a natural sense of gladness and inspiration.
Why are these recollective practices so invigorating? What's the mechanism?
They stimulate the happiness and concentration factors directly. Recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, for instance, is inherently energizing and delightful. It brings a kind of coolness and ease to the mind, which is a direct antidote to the oppressive heat of anger or the sticky weight of dullness.
So by dwelling continuously and mindfully on a single wholesome concept like the Dharma,
The mind naturally lets go of its entrancement with the hindrances, the desire, the aversion, the doubt, the restlessness. It just loses interest in them.
so they're like a mental reset button. They bring the mind up to the threshold of deep absorption, what's called access concentration, by generating happiness and stability.
They do, but, and this is a critical distinction, they're not suitable objects for full absorption, for full jhana.
Why not?
Because these practices require continuous thinking and reflection. They are conceptual, they're discursive. That's way too coarse for the complete unification of mind that jhana requires.
So they're just the skillful means to get you back on track.
They refresh and energize the mind so you can then return to the primary, simpler, non-conceptual object, the breath.
After building this whole ethical fortress and stabilizing the heart with the Brahma Viharas, let's get into the actual nuts and bolts of the breath practice. This is where Shayla Catherine's blueprint gets really specific and distinct from more general mindfulness.
Right. The initial prep is pretty foundational. You take a comfortable, upright, relaxed posture. You want the breath to move easily and freely. And the attention should drop into the body, just feeling the points of contact with the cushion or the floor, settling into the present moment.
And there's a practical tip here for anyone thinking about a retreat.
Yes, Catherine specifically recommends sitting a little bit extra in the week before you go. That preconditioning helps reduce the deep-seated sleepiness that can really plague the first few days of intensive practice.
Okay, now comes the crucial part. The big methodological instruction, the sharp, critical shift that really defines the jhana path in this system. For vipassana, for insight practice, you're usually told to focus on the physicality of the breath.
The pressure, the tingling, the movement, the temperature, what's called the wind element.
But for jhana, you have to abandon that.
You have to completely abandon it. This might be the single most important technical detail you need to grasp for this specific approach. For deep absorption, you must let go of awareness of the body and all somatic sensation.
All of it.
All of it. If you hold on to the feeling of the breath, the pressure in the nostrils, the hardness, the movement in the abdomen, the mind cannot let go of all sensory experience and absorb into that unified state.
Hang on, that sounds risky. Isn't abandoning sensation a form of suppression? Aren't you just going to float off and become vague?
That's the paradox, isn't it? We aren't suppressing the breath, we are relating to it in a fundamentally different way.
Okay.
We're observing the breath concept, the pure occurrence of the breath happening, the sheer knowledge that an inhalation is happening and exhalation is happening.
And this knowledge is located where?
At the area of the nostrils or the upper lip. But this knowledge must be entirely divorced from the physical feeling of the wind element. Jhana states are non-somatic. No physical sensation arises or can penetrate that stillness. So we're training the mind to fixate on the pure mental marker of the breath.
So the physical feeling is like a temporary anchor you use to find the spot, but the true object you're aiming for is the abstract idea, the pure event of the breath happening at that location.
Precisely. You use the physicality to locate the focus initially, but then you have to maintain equanimity for whatever the breath is doing, not judging it, not controlling it, while concentrating solely on that concept.
And to stabilize this non-somatic attention, especially when your mind is all over the place, there's a technique.
Yes, a coarse but very effective technique is counting.
The counting method, as it's outlined, is very systematic, counting up to 10 and then back down to 1, and really emphasizing the entire length of each breath.
It's a way to force continuous attention. It's effective, but it is a coarse tool. You shouldn't rely on it once the mind begins to stabilize. Its whole purpose is just to direct your attention entirely to the duration of the breath.
And as the mind settles with this practice,
Intrusive thoughts begin to subside, and the sustained focus on that conceptual breath leads to the development of the nimitta.
the landmark,
Yeah,
the signpost that tells you that true access concentration is getting close.
exactly.
Tell us more about the nimitta, the counterpart sign. It's often described in these very mystical visual terms, but here it's framed as a stable, smooth, white radiance or luminosity.
It is absolutely crucial to understand that the nimitta is a mental reflection of the breath. It has no physical aspect whatsoever. The breath and the light merge into a single, utterly mental experience.
So it's not something you visualize or create.
Not at all. It's a spontaneous consequence of profound clarity and unification. It's what happens when the mind is so unified and clear that the focus itself becomes luminous.
And we have to be really cautious about initial visual phenomena, right?
Yeah.
Catherine warns against getting seduced by the first glimmerings or twinkles.
Yes, those are sometimes called krinamittas. They're unstable, they're fleeting, but often colorful. The practitioner has to stick with the breath concept as the primary object, maintain equanimity, and trust that the stable nimitta will develop on its own.
If you chase the glimmers, you scatter your concentration.
You're lost. But once that stable nimitta is achieved, A steady, luminous mental focus with no accompanying physical sensation. The mind is utterly bright. The heart is relaxed, and it's free of all five hindrances. That is the refined, unified object that's ready to support full absorption.
So once that nimitta is stabilized, a
Mhm.
true sign that the mind has entered this pure conceptual domain, the meditator is moving through the threshold of access concentration.
Yes. Access is attained when the mind is unified, when it's cohered around the nimitta, and it's completely free of all five hindrances.
Craving, judging, doubt, agitation, and sluggishness.
They're all gone. It's a taste of true unification. Thoughts might still arise, but they're wholesome and they're ephemeral.
Like bubbles.
Like momentary bubbles or clouds that pass instantly. They never distract the primary focus. The Hana factors are strong, and they're ready to launch the mind into a deeper absorption.
And from this threshold, where all unwholesome states have quieted down,
Hmm.
the mind enters the first jhana. It's called the first fearless abiding. What are the specific mental factors that characterize this state?
This state is defined by four factors. Initial application, which is vitakka, sustained attention, vikara, rapture, piti, and happiness, sukha.
And there's a famous analogy for this, the bathman analogy.
Yes, from the ancient texts. It says that just as a skilled bathman needs bath powder and water until the moisture wets, soaks, and pervades the entire ball of powder inside and out without the ball oozing, in the same way, the rapture and happiness born of seclusion drench, steep, fill, and pervade the body. No part is untouched by this joy.
And yet the mind stays unified on the nimitta.
It remains completely unified. It is a joy born entirely of relinquishment, not of getting something.
It sounds incredibly powerful. But the practice doesn't stop there. You move into the next stages by practicing further relinquishment and refinement. Now, wait a minute. Isn't relinquishment the opposite of concentration? If I'm exerting continuous effort to sustain a state, how do I simultaneously practice letting go without the whole thing collapsing?
That is the core paradox of jhana mastery. The initial stages absolutely require effort. That application, vitakka, and sustained attention, vikara. But for the mind to stabilize in a deeper way, it has to let go of the very tools that launched it. The grosser factors have to be abandoned to reveal the more subtle ones.
So for the transition into the second jhana, what are you abandoning?
You abandon vitakka and vikara, initial application and sustained attention. In the first jhana, you're still subtly checking the object, you're directing the mind, confirming the nimitta. That is still a form of thought, even if it's wholesome thought. For the second jhana, the mind is so naturally and profoundly unified that it just doesn't need that launch sequence anymore. It stays fixed effortlessly. And the removal of that effort is deeply calming. It leaves only rapture, piti, and happiness, sukha, a state born of deep internal stillness.
And the refinement continues into the third jhana. Now you have to let go of the rapture itself.
You do. While piti rapture is delightful, it's also very energetic, it's vibrating. From the perspective of the higher, calmer states, that vibration becomes distracting, it can be tantalizing, or even a bit annoying.
So you let go of the excitement.
You let it fade. And when piti is relinquished, what remains is this pervasive, deeply calm happiness, sukha, but without the intense, vibrating delight. Catherine notes that this third jhana happiness is so expansive and spacious that nothing distinctly unpleasant can arise while you're in that state. It's really the height of internal conditioned joy.
And then the final progression leads us to the fourth jhana, the ultimate refinement.
The fourth jhana is infused with the highest form of happiness, which is actually equanimity, upekkha. Ah, so it's not a feeling of joy anymore.
No. In this state, the mind lets go of even that profound, pleasant feeling of sukha. Because even calm happiness is still a conditioned feeling. So the state becomes neither painful nor pleasant. It's defined by the purification of mindfulness by equanimity.
What does that feel like?
The mind is utterly still, motionless, perfectly unified and perfectly balanced. The energetic function of directed thought, which was so necessary for the first jhana, is now seen as way too vigorous and coarse for this level. It's been entirely abandoned. This is a state of spiritual surrender, resting in this utterly still unification that can then serve as the strongest possible basis for insight.
It's clear that just getting into these states is one thing, but mastery is something else entirely. The training demands more than just falling into them by accident.
Mastery is crucial. It means you have the ability to enter and dwell in the state easily, where, when, and for as long as we wish.
That's a high level of control. It is. This systematic control involves resolving beforehand to emerge at a predetermined time. You might decide, I will emerge in 5 minutes, or 30 minutes or 47 minutes, and you actually come out precisely at that moment.
Why is that so important?
That level of intentional control demonstrates that the mind is highly malleable and subject to your volition, which is a critical understanding you'll need for the insight practice that comes later.
The source material also emphasizes that even with mastery, the absorption state is inherently fragile.
It is fragile. Technically speaking, if you hear a sound, a bell, thunder, someone coughing, or even if a subtle thought breaks through that coherence,
You're out.
you are technically out of jhana for that split second because your object has shifted from the nimitta to something else. However, the key instruction is not to fuss about perfection. Breaks are expected. The practice requires immediate, diligent, and non-judgmental resettling back onto the object. You're building skill and stability, not chasing some static, perfect ideal.
So, if these states are characterized by such profound, blissful peace and stability, why on earth would you bother leaving them? Why not just stay in the fourth jhana forever?
And that question brings us to the ultimate purpose of the whole thing. Concentration is a tool. It's not the destination. If you just dwell there forever, you've achieved a very pleasant state of temporary liberation, but it's not permanent liberation.
Because it's a created state.
It's a created state. But the concentrated mind, the mind that is agile, malleable, unified, clear, and stable, is supremely fit for the work of insight meditation, for clear seeing, for vipassana.
So when the meditator emerges, the practice shifts instantly. They take the concentrated mind itself as the object of their investigation.
Exactly. They look back at the mental state they just experienced. They ask which factors were present. Was that first jhana, second, third, fourth? Checking the factors is an explicit, systematic part of the training.
And that intellectual checking is important because
It links the raw felt experience back to the wisdom framework of right view. You're not just having cool experiences, you're understanding them.
which leads us to what is maybe the most counterintuitive part of this whole practice, training in non-attachment. The ultimate purpose of cultivating these incredibly strong, pleasant jhanic states is to then train your mind to watch them dissolve.
The jhanic factors, that intense rapture, the deep happiness, the profound peace, they become your straw target for non-attachment. You've gone to the highest possible conditioned happiness you can create, and now you have to see its limitation. You have to see the defect of jhana.
What could possibly be the defect of bliss?
That it is conditioned, that's the defect. It's produced through volition, through effort, through a specific set of mental factors, and because of that, it is inherently vulnerable to change.
The moment you emerge, the state is gone.
It's gone. The effort required to sustain it, and the inevitable moment that it ends reveals its fundamental limitation. It's impermanent. So you create the best possible experience only to deliberately witness its demise. And in doing that, you develop a complete, profound relinquishment, and that is the core of liberation.
So when the mind emerges from this training, having seen even the most powerful bliss dissolve, how does that change how you engage with the regular world?
The mind feels dramatically less sticky. It's less prone to grasping at pleasant things or having aversion to unpleasant things in daily life.
It creates a kind of buffer.
A dispassion, and that provides a vital bridge between the secluded, peaceful absorption state and direct, wise contact with worldly experience. You need that stability to clearly see the three characteristics of all phenomena, both mind and matter.
And those three characteristics are what again?
That everything is impermanent, Inika. Unsatisfactory or subject to suffering, dukkha, and not self, anatta.
And this isn't just an intellectual analysis.
No, it's a direct, penetrative knowledge. When the stable, concentrated mind sees the continuous changing nature of all experience so clearly, clinging just loses its power. This wisdom reveals that there is absolutely nothing, not even the bliss of jhana, that should be clung to.
I think this is where that analogy of the second dart really lands with some impact.
It does. The Buddha taught that the first dart is the inevitable physical pain or unpleasant sensation of life. It just comes with having a body. We get old, we get sick, we lose things we love. That's the first dart.
And the second dart.
The second dart is the mental suffering, the resistance, the contraction, the story we tell ourselves, the reactivity we inflict upon ourselves after that first dart has already landed.
And what the concentrated mind does is it enables the practitioner to leave suffering precisely at that first dart.
Exactly. With the stability you've accrued through jhana, especially the pervasive equanimity of the fourth jhana, you can endure searing physical pain. You can allow it to just be pain without adding the story, without adding the mental suffering around it.
So the quiet happiness of equanimity is strong enough to pervade the mind, even when the body is in acute distress.
It is. The concentrated mind is what makes that bearable, even joyful in a strange way, because that second dart, the mental resistance, it simply doesn't arise.
So to wrap this up, we've dissected a tremendously comprehensive and highly technical path that's been articulated by Shayla Catherine.
It's incredibly systematic, and it begins not in the meditation hall, but with that ethical foundation of virtue and the deep understanding of right view.
We saw how to actively cultivate wholesome heart practices like metta, and how to constantly tune the energetic factors of the mind with that indispensable calming power of equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, we learned the core mechanism, shifting the focus of the breath from that coarse physical sensation to the pure breath concept of the nostrils.
All to stabilize that luminous mental reflection, the nimitta.
The entire journey is just defined by continuous, diligent relinquishment.
Releasing unwholesome states to reach access concentration, refining the jhanas by letting go of grosser factors like thought and rapture, and then ultimately using the entire blissful attainment as a straw target to practice non-attachment.
All to make sure that concentration always serves its true purpose.
Yeah,
Liberating insight.
exactly.
And the most profound insight that comes from cultivating this deep happiness is its powerful demonstration that true happiness, well, it has nothing to do with all the accumulations and the busyness and the external things that we do in our lives.
It's an inside job. It's entirely dependent on mental conditioning and stability.
Which leaves us with a provocative thought for you, the learner, to carry forward.
When you find yourself struggling at home or at work, reacting to pleasant or unpleasant events, you might consider this. Wise actions and critical decisions are ultimately not going to be based upon your momentary pleasant or unpleasant feelings.
They can't be.
Instead, they will be based upon the profound clarity, balance, and stability that wise concentration provides. If we focus on purifying the mind, the right actions tend to follow naturally rather than through anxious, stressful effort.